As a student of human nature, I realized there are people who think that deep down, everyone really thinks just like they do. And there are people who believe that everyone's views are completely their own and are not at all affected by the world around them. Then there's everyone in between. Now, let's discuss some of the things that the Biden-Harris administration did, but first, let's get to defining what is objectivism. Objectivism is a school of thought which dictates of irrefutable facts that reality exists as an objective absolute, independent of consciousness. This means that the world is real and can be understood through reason alone. If you want to argue that there is in fact no spoon, then there are plenty of New Age, neo and pseudo-scientific outlets where you can get your kicks. Here we discuss actual objective reality, as it is in our observable world. According to the esteemed author and historian Yuval Noah Harari, most information which exists in the world is junk information. He goes on to say that fiction is cheap, but objective truth, especially with any level of nuance, is costly. We now live in an algorithmically controlled post-truth world, when everyone has the ability, if they so choose, to pick and choose which set of facts, alternative or otherwise, they will live their life by. In the world of the esteemed former prosecutor, former New York City mayor, and one-time presidential candidate, Brutal Giuliani, truth isn't truth. This underscores a lack of nuanced understanding of reality, which can be massaged into whatever agenda a person could have, irrespective of reality. This kind of twisting of what the objective reality is something I don't plan to do here. Today, nuance is a concept as alien to most people as trying to put yourself into the shoes of a person that you don't relate to on a personal level. So I won't bother you with that. If you want nuance along with reality, then go check out someone like David Pakman, Cenk Uygur, or Pod Save America. Now that the era of the Democratic-held government in the US is coming to an end, in this first ever episode, we'll explore some notable actions of the Biden-Harris administration. To those who seek prosperity through force rather than reason, when it comes to many Western cultures, and the US in particular, some speak of decline, yet refuse to see the machinery of progress before their eyes, calling for freedom while rejecting the very evidence of advancements in society. Let us speak then of facts and not be stubborn children of reality who fall victim to wishful thinking or collective hysteria. Those who claim to understand the basics of financial markets must surely comprehend that global supply chains are not servants to be pushed around by simple command of a president in office. They are living networks of human action, each just a cog in a complex machine responding to a multitude of incentives, each connection forged by an invisible hand of commerce. The disruptions they complain about were not born in Washington, but in the reality of a global pandemic that cared nothing for political allegiance, engulfing the whole world. On a more relatable note, consider the objective metrics of your own personal prosperity. The nation's markets you may be familiar with have by and large reached historic heights thanks to the Biden-Harris administration, yet many claim impoverishment. The unemployment rate has plummeted to levels that would have been deemed impossible just years ago by any metric, with job growth consistently outpacing even the most positive predictions. Yet some speak of economic destruction. These are not matters of opinion. They are the concrete measurements of objective reality. Some complain against government intervention, as if the ghosts of Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin are somehow nationalizing private institutions as some kind of a communist dictatorship takeover. Yet, when presented with policies that serve your irrational self-interest, you reject them without examination. Let us speak on a surface level of these policies, one by one, in terms of utilitarian value, pure self-interest. Each of the following topics can be turned into a standalone episode of their own. Here, we can simply scratch the tip of the iceberg that each of these areas of life represent. Let's start with healthcare costs. The Biden-Harris administration has forced insurance companies to actually compete in the marketplace, just like it happens in the rest of the world, driving down premiums for the consumer. Is it not in your self-interest to pay less for the same services? According to a report from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the average premium for individuals purchasing a plan through the ACA, Affordable Care Act, decreased by over 30% in 2021. Additionally, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 included provisions to cap insulin costs for Medicare recipients at $35 per month, directly decreasing out-of-pocket expenses. There have been price controls imposed on countless other popular drugs, not through forceful decree, but through market mechanisms. Is it not in your self-interest to keep more of your money? Next, we talk climate policy. Those who claim to understand business must surely grasp that adaptation to changing conditions is the essence of survival. After all, the U.S. Navy's motto is adapt and overcome. The administration's climate initiatives have already created hundreds of thousands of high-paying jobs in emerging industries. According to the Department of Energy, these initiatives are projected to create over 500,000 jobs in the renewable energy sector by 2030. Tax credits for electric vehicle purchases are up to $7,500, and tax incentives for solar panels have stimulated the market, making these technologies more accessible and reducing dependence on fossil fuels. Is it not in everyone's self-interest to profit from this transition? These tax credits are empowering more people than ever to join the inevitable wave of the future. Are these not the tools for prosperity? Next, we talk gun rights. The administration has maintained the absolute fundamental right on self-defense while implementing rational restrictions on those who have proven themselves incapable of responsible ownership and increasing the overall safety of residents throughout the country. The bipartisan Safer Communities Act expanded background checks for gun purchases under the age of 21. Studies, as well as basic common sense, indicate that background checks can reduce gun violence and prevent firearms from falling into the hands of those who may pose a risk. Is it not in everyone's self-interest to ensure that weapons remain in the hands of the competent rather than the criminal or the insane? On economic policies, the historic infrastructure $1.2 trillion investment is something not seen since the Eisenhower days. This will lead to modernizing transportation, broadband, and utilities. The American Society of Civil Engineers estimated that every $1 billion invested in infrastructure creates approximately 13,000 jobs. When you take the total amount into consideration, that's a lot of jobs to be had. These are not some abstract concepts, ideas, or projections of intent. They are concrete improvements to the tools of commerce, roads we're all drive on, bridges that carry our goods, internet connections that power businesses. Is it not in everyone's self-interest to have superior tools for creating wealth? The American Rescue Plan stands as a clear testament to the objective benefit of economic intervention. Those who cry against government action must confront an inconvenient truth. When markets face extraordinary disruption, extraordinary measures become not merely justified, but necessary. This plan delivered direct payments of $1,400 to eligible Americans and expanded unemployment benefits, which economists have indicated helped stabilize the economy during the pandemic downturn, which affected millions of people across the country. According to an analyst by the Brookings Institution, these measures contributed to a 13% drop in poverty rates in the U.S. in 2021 alone. The direct payments on employment benefits and support to businesses were not charity. They were essential tools to prevent a total collapse of the very market system the critics claim to cherish. Consider the national benefit of the child tax credit expansion. Millions of children lifted from poverty represents a direct investment in future productive capacity. Every child raised above a mere subsistence becomes a potential creator of wealth, an engine of innovation, a future producer rather than a dependent consumer. This is not welfare, it is investment in human capital. The enhancement of the Affordable Care Act follows the same logical imperative. A workforce unburdened by catastrophic health costs is a workforce free to innovate, to produce, to create wealth. The increased subsidies represent not government overreach, but a rational reallocation of resources to maximize productive potential. The Student Debt Relief Initiative must be understood in terms of market efficiency. A generation shackled by unpayable debt is a generation unable to participate fully in wealth creation. The targeting of relief to those in public service and low-income brackets is not charity. It is the removal of artificial barriers to market participation. The administration's racial equity initiatives represent not social engineering, but the elimination of market inefficiencies. Every capable individual denied full market participation due to systemic barriers represents squandered productive potential. Supporting minority-owned businesses is not preferential treatment. It is the removal of artificial constraints on market competition. Labor rights and union support must be viewed through the lens of market power equilibrium. Strong labor protections do not impede business. They ensure that the market for human capital functions efficiently. Fair wages are not gifts. They are the price of human productive capacity, determined by proper market function. On the bipartisan infrastructure law's specific projects, from transportation networks to broadband access, represents the physical framework of wealth creation. Clean water initiatives are not environmental charity, but essential infrastructure for human productivity. These are not costs, they are investments in the machinery of prosperity. The affordable housing initiatives address a fundamental market inefficiency. A workforce without a stable housing cannot achieve maximum productivity. The efforts to combat homelessness are not mere social policy. They are measures to maximize human capital utilization. The transition to clean energy demonstrates the marriage of environmental necessity with market opportunity. The goal of net zero emissions by 2050 is not environmental idealism. It is a response to market realities. The jobs created in the green energy sector represent not government make work, but emergence of new markets driven by technological progress. International diplomacy and global health initiatives must be understood as extensions of market reality. In a global economy, isolation is not independence, it is surrender. The reestablishment of international alliances represents not political posturing, but the recognition of economic interdependence. Global health initiatives, including COVID-19 vaccine distribution, are not charity, but investments in market stability. The support for agriculture and rural development acknowledges a fundamental truth. The productivity of the land remains a cornerstone of national wealth. Investments in sustainable agriculture are not environmental conceits, but recognition of the need for long-term resource management. The improvement in veterans affairs represents the fulfillment of a contract. Those who defend the nation's interests have earned through their actions the right to health care and support. This is not charity, it is a payment for services rendered. Consider the irrefutable logic of the administration's energy policy, a dual approach that recognizes both the immediate necessity of fossil fuels and joining of the global inevitable march towards renewable resources. This is not idealism, it is pure pragmatism. The market demands both, and those who position themselves to profit from this reality will reap the rewards of foresight. The Chips and Science Act represents the essence of rational self-interest in action. Those who understand markets know that semiconductor manufacturing is not merely about producing chips. It is about seizing the means of technological independence. Every dollar invested in domestic semiconductor production is a dollar invested in America's capacity to compete, to innovate, to profit. This is not government charity. It is strategic investment in the tools of wealth creation. The violence that plagues certain cities is not a reflection of policy failure, but of market inefficiencies in law enforcement resources. The administration's approach to crime has produced measurable results. Violent crime rates have declined where rational enforcement strategies are employed. Those who claim otherwise substitute anecdote for evidence, emotion for reason. Regarding corporate consolidation, the administration's stance against monopolistic mergers is not an attack on business, but a defense of the free market itself. A market dominated by monopolies is no market at all. It is a form of private tyranny, no less oppressive than government overreach. True capitalism requires competition, and competition requires rules and a regulatory structure that prevent the strong from destroying the market that gave them the strength. The current economic pressures, the inflation that still affects people, are not the products of policy, but the natural consequences of global market forces responding to unprecedented disruption. Those who understand economics recognize that the policies being implemented today are laying the groundwork for future prosperity. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is not mere spending. It is investment in the physical framework upon which all commerce depends. Speaking of freedom while rejecting its most basic premise is simply backwards thinking. That reality is objective and must be dealt with as such. The global economy is not a fiction to be ignored when inconvenient. Climate change is not a political opinion, but a measurable fact with quantifiable costs to property and prosperity. The administration that is so despised by many has achieved these things not through some nebulous force of communism or socialism, but through the market mechanics Americans claim to revere. They have expanded overtime pay. Is it not the essence of receiving value for value? They have reduced predatory banking fees. Is this not protection of property rights? They have made birth control accessible. Is this not the embodiment of individual choice? Opposition to these policies is not based on reason, but on tribal allegiance, the very essence of socialism people claim to despise. The choice was not between left and right, but between fact and fantasy, between dealing with the world as it is and retreating into comfortable delusions, between genuine self-interest and self-destructive spite. The choice was not carefully made. Reality, unlike politics, does not care about your beliefs. It simply is. For those who value reason above rhetoric and results above resentment, the evidence has been standing ready for inspection, yet it was ignored. Judgment should not have been done by what people are told to believe, but by what they can verify with their own mind and their own eyes. Now the future belongs to those who have drawn on people's raw emotion and frustrations of their own individual bubbles. The method of divide and conquer has worked once again. We must face it clear-eyed and prepare for what's to come, without pining for an imagined past that never was. The choice has been made. Now we must live with it.